Though having its roots in the mid-70s, hip-hop in America didn't become a well-known or respected form of music until 1983, arguably the most important year for hip-hop's development as a whole. This is when Russell Simmons met Rick Rubin and they founded Def Jam Records, the first major hip-hop record label, acquiring talents such as the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, and most famously Run DMC. In 1984, Def Jam Records became the first hip-hop record label to be bought by a major music company, with Universal Music Group acquiring them. Now, what happens when a major billion-dollar company wants to increase their profits? Well, they start selling internationally, and that's what started to happen to hip-hop in the mid-1980s. Unless it was a war-torn or totalitarian regime country, hip-hop from Def Jam Records was starting to become sold internationally during the mid-80s and early 90s, making hip-hop a global form of music. Many foreign countries started to adopt hip-hop as not just a form of music, but also as a form of culture in general. But for this documentary, I'll only be focusing on hip-hop in the East Asian country of Japan. There are three main trends of American hip-hop culture that the underground Japanese counterculture scene adopted in the mid-80s and early 90s. The first adoption of hip-hop culture in Japan was breakdancing, as artist Crazy A was the first dancer in Japan to popularize breakdancing in early 1984. Following acts would appear throughout the 80s and 90s, and breakdancing as a whole became a popular pastime in places like the Yoyogi Park. The second adoption of hip-hop culture in Japan was fashion, or more specifically, streetwear. Streetwear pioneer Hiroshi Fujiwara was highly influenced by hip-hop culture in America, and Fujiwara himself is usually considered to be the godfather of modern streetwear, not only in Japan but also globally, as he was the creator behind the influential fashion brand Good Enough and later Fragment Design. Many of Japanese youth in the late 80s and early 90s started wearing these sort of streetwear brands whether they knew the history behind them or not, as the Tokyo district of Harajuku became the first place in Japan to popularize streetwear. Hiroshi Fujiwara was also a DJ, which brings us to the third and final adoption of hip-hop culture in Japan, which was of course DJing. DJs like DJ Honda, DJ Yutaka, DJ Muro, Dabo, the already mentioned Fujiwara, and of course DJ Krush were the main Japanese DJs who popularized hip-hop through their sets in the 80s and 90s. One of these aspiring DJs was a man by the name of Tamaki Nagao, who DJed during the early 90s. Fast forward to the mid-2000s, Nagao, who now goes by the nickname Nigo, is one of the most popular fashion designers in Japan, and wants to broaden his horizons when it comes to other forms of art, most notably music. In 2005, Nigo created one of the most memorable Japanese rap groups of the time, that created 2 feature albums, multiple singles, worked on a blockbuster movie soundtrack, appeared in many sold-out concerts, and collaborated with artists like Daft Punk, Pharrell Williams, and even Kanye West. This is the unofficial history of the Teriyaki Boyz. Our journey begins on December 23rd, 1970, when a kid named Tamaki Nagao is born. From the get-go, Tamaki was a huge fan of American pop culture, whether it be cartoons from Disney, movies like Star Wars, or music like the Beatles and even the Beastie Boys. Around the time when hip-hop was starting its underground development in Japan, Tamaki was just a teenager, which is probably why Tamaki was such a big fan of it at the time. He couldn't understand what they were saying, but it was the look and the sound that made Tamaki fall in love with hip-hop. In 1987, Tamaki bought a turntable setup as he wanted to become a DJ at this time, playing mostly American hip-hop music. This was also around the time when Tamaki discovered the fashion of Hiroshi Fujiwara out of a column of the popular Japanese magazine Takarajima, which made Tamaki realize his love for fashion. When he graduated high school, Tamaki then enrolled in the Bunka Fashion College in Tokyo, but in retrospect, he didn't really learn anything, as Tamaki was just trying to build up his career as a DJ in local Tokyo nightclubs. In 1990, Tamaki met fellow Bunka Fashion College student Jun Takahashi, and soonly became friends as they had the same tastes in music and fashion. Meanwhile, Tamaki is actually making a name for himself and being a DJ and being a fashion designer, which catches the attention of Tamaki's fashion idol Hiroshi Fujiwara, who liked Tamaki's style and saw great potential in him. In fact, Fujiwara saw so much potential in Tamaki that he offered him a job as his personal assistant, which Tamaki of course took. Tamaki would start assisting Fujiwara with the articles for the already mentioned Takurajima magazines, and would help Fujiwara set up his streetwear brand Good Enough, which basically started Tamaki's professional fashion career. One night while at a Tokyo nightclub with Fujiwara, somebody said that Tamaki looked just like Fujiwara and called him Hiroshi Fujiwara Nigo, with Nigo translating to number 2. Tamaki actually felt very honored by this comparison to his inspiration and mentor, and decided to adopt it as his new nickname. So from now on, I'm gonna be referring to Tamaki Nagao as Nigo. This is also around the time when Fujiwara, Jun Takahashi, and Nigo met graphic designer Skate Thing, who was very much in demand as he was one of the only Japanese graphic designers at the time who was into fashion. Skate Thing also helped with Fujiwara's Good Enough. With the help of Fujiwara, Jun Takahashi and Nigo would open up their very own fashion store, Nowhere, on April 1st, 1993, in the Urahara district of Tokyo. If you recall from the opening of this video, the Urahara district was practically the birthplace of Japanese streetwear in the 80s and 90s. Nowhere was split up into 2 halves. The left side was Takahashi's side, which sold his new brand Undercover, and the right was Nigo's side, which sold vintage and used streetwear. Because of this, Takahashi's side was way more popular than Nigo's. Still though, Nowhere started to become a very successful up-and-coming clothing store, but Nigo knew that he had to create his own fashion brand to further the success of not only Nowhere but also his own fashion career in general. The only problem was that he didn't have an idea for the brand, or at least not yet.
The world he finds out in the galaxy will challenge every idea you've ever had of civilization. A planet where man is the lowest order of living things, and the superior beings are apes.
One fateful night in mid to late 1993, Skate Thing and Nigo decided to watch a 5-hour marathon of all the original Planet of the Apes films. Skate Thing then suggested to Nigo that he should make his new brand based on the Planet of the Apes films, which Nigo absolutely loved. Nigo then decided the name for his brand to be called A Bathing Ape. The name for the brand actually refers to the Japanese saying a bathing ape in lukewarm water, which in itself refers to young people who live lazy and relaxed in their lifestyles. After that night, Skate Thing would provide Nigo with the signature ape head logo, which was then printed on t-shirts and sold on Nigo's side of Nowhere. And from there, history is made. A Bathing Ape soon became a popular streetwear brand within the Urahara district, as it became as successful as the other popular Japanese streetwear brands like Undercover, Good Enough, Bounty Hunter, and Neighborhood. Many attributed Bape's early success to Nigo's way of selling it, with him only selling it at Nowhere, creating limited amounts of clothing, and charging fairly high prices to make customers feel like they bought something that was exclusive. Many say that Nowhere's success hit its ultimate peak in 1996, as many then Japanese teenagers were highly interested in the emerging trends of streetwear, and how these brands beautifully blended American pop culture into their fashion. This was also around the time when Skate Thing designed the famous camo print, which would also become a very iconic design, most famously being printed on Bape's hoodies. Nowhere would still be a successful clothing store throughout the mid to late 90s, leaving one of the most important marks in streetwear history not only for Japan but also for the world in fashion in general. But in 2000, Nowhere would close its doors as both Takahashi and Nigo wanted to expand their already successful brands. Previously in the mid-90s, Nigo had met a graffiti artist by the name of Stash, who also owned a streetwear store in New York called Recon, which later would become the first international store to sell Bape. In 1994, New York rapper Biggie Smalls had become the first major rapper to ever wear Bape, although many still debate over whether the camo jacket was his or it was photographer Sean Mortison. At this time, Bape was being sold at more than 40 different stores in Japan, but in 1999, Nigo decided to pull Bape off the shelves of all of these stores, as he decided to open up his own Bathing Ape store in Hong Kong. It was definitely a risky decision, but it ultimately paid off in the end since Bape was now a super exclusive brand. However, during the 2000s, Bape would become less exclusive, and would grow to be one of the most popular and influential streetwear brands of all time, with new designs such as the Shark Hoodie, Baby Milo, Bapesta, and the multiple collaborations with other brands becoming iconic seemingly overnight. Bape was clearly hitting its stride at the time, but you may be wondering, what does this all have to do with music? You know that guy Stash, who I was just talking about like a second ago? Well, Nigo actually met Stash through musician James Lavelle, founder of U.N.K.L.E, who would sign Nigo to his UK record label Mowax Records. In 1997, Nigo released his first known single with U.N.K.L.E called Ape Shall Never Kill Ape. Overall, Ape Shall Never Kill Ape is an okay single with some creative use of samples. Nigo's first album, or at least the first one I can find of his, is his album Ape Sounds, which was Nigo's debut album for Mowax Records in conjunction with Japanese record label Toys Factory, which released in 1999. The album artwork was illustrated by famous graffiti artist Futura 2000, who met Nigo through Lavelle. The album is a mix of experimental hip-hop, electronic, and rock. It's very weird, and the album is certainly not for everyone. Some of the more rock-oriented songs like Monster, Free Diving, Jet Set, and Too Much sort of feel like an ending theme to an early 2000s anime, which is actually kind of why I vibe to these songs. The more hip-hop oriented tracks, like the Very Urgent Dub and March of the General, kind of give off this King Ghidorah's Take Me to Your Leader vibe, but instead of referencing kaiju films, they're referencing Planet of the Apes films. But these tracks are nowhere near as amazing as those on Take Me to Your Leader. Overall, the tracks I like the most are Monster, Free Diving, The Very Urgent Dub, and March of the General. The rest of the track list is either very forgettable or way too experimental and out there for me personally. I'm not going to give this or any other album I talk about in this documentary a score or a ranking, as I'm far from a music critic, and I think that music, especially albums in general, are very subjective. The only thing that I'll be critical of is mostly what I personally think of the individual songs in my own opinion, and since these are Japanese rap songs, I'll mostly be talking about the instrumentals since I don't speak Japanese. Also in 2000, Nigo released an EP titled Shadow of the Ape Sounds, which is made up of pre-existing singles that were released in 1999. This EP features the singles Once Upon a Rhyme in Japan, which features hip-hop legend Rakim, Something for the People, which was remixed by DJ Krush, and Very Good My Friends. I don't know that the versions I found in these songs are the original versions or not, and honestly it's very hard to find these songs in the first place. Also, I'll just mention it here that most of these early singles and EPs from Nigo are not on streaming services, so there's no way to find if what I'm listening to is the correct copy of the songs in question. The original copies of the CDs are very rare and uncommon, and are usually expensive, so keep that in mind. Regardless, the only song that I really like out of this EP is Something for the People, as it has a really chill and cool instrumental. Also in 2000, Nigo released the single KFF 2000, which features Jizza and Prodigal Son. The instrumental is okay, but what kills it for me personally is the half-ass hook and verse by Jizza, so don't expect this single to be anything on par with Liquid Swords. The single also had remixes done by Force of Nature and Bao, which I was unable to find the Bao remix. Also in 2000, Nigo released yet another single called Chill Fighting, which I was also unable to find, and the only place I did find it was like this sketchy ass site with like an MP3 download link. In 2001, there was a remix of Ape Sounds. Some of these remixes I could not find anywhere, but for the ones I did find, I thought were okay, as I like Harumi Hasono's remix of Kung Fu Fighting, and Smith and Mighty's remix of Too Much. Also in 2001, Nigo released the Bateman theme, and Yes and Why, which I also could not find anywhere. And for a while, these were the last singles / early mixtapes that Nigo would release, as in terms of music, Nigo would be focusing all his time on organizing his own music festivals, more specifically the worldwide Bapehead shows. Despite being called the Worldwide Apehead Show, the first Worldwide Apehead shows were held in the Tokyo music venue Alaska Blitz and Tokyo nightclub Harlem on July 21st and December 14th of 1997. Unlike other future Bapehead shows, the 1997 Worldwide Apehead shows has no available footage, or at least none from what I'm able to find. However, we do have a lot of photos from the event provided by a February 1998 issue of Smart Magazine. We also have a lot of posters and promotional material, as well as special merch like the exclusive Bape t-shirts, stickers, and posters that were sold in this event. And from what we know, the roster of the 1997 Worldwide Apehead shows was composed of DJ sets by Nigo, June, Yappy, Michael K, and apparently more, but I wasn't able to find a complete set list. Nigo would host the second Worldwide Apehead show, now called the Worldwide Bapehead shows, on December 12, 1998, performing once again at Alaska Blitz like the year before. Unlike the 1997 shows, the 1998 Worldwide Bapehead show actually has footage, as it was probably aired on a live Japanese TV channel. The concert starts off with a pre-recorded video of Nigo giving an introduction. Then we see a lot of pre-recorded Bape animations, some of which are done in this sort of 8-bit/LED animation, which I think is pretty cool. Then we get an intro of all the acts that are going to be performing. Then we cut to an interview with Nigo on why he started the Worldwide Bapehead shows and why he created a baiting ape. Then we cut to the first act, U.N.K.L.E, who basically do a DJ set, which is okay. U.N.K.L.'s DJ set then transitions to a performance by Japanese rapper Taki Khan, in which U.N.K.L.E are still DJing. The performance is okay, but towards the end, Taki Khan starts rapping in like this high-pitched sort of way. It's almost like a precursor to 645 AR. Once their act ends, it cuts to a commercial break and picks up with the performance of Australian artist Ben Lee, who sounds like any generic rock band from the 90s. After Ben Lee's performance comes another commercial break, and then it cuts back to Money Mark's performance, which starts off in this very weird way to say the least.
I'd like to give you an insight on a scene from my new horror movie.
But don't worry, it gets much better, and then it gets even more experimental with these types of instruments that he starts using. It's just really weird. After Money Mark's set, we then cut to another commercial break, and then we cut to Cornelius' performance, and it's actually pretty damn good. Cornelius' performance is probably the best and most memorable performance of this whole concert. And there's this really funny moment where Cornelius has this like button thing that he presses over and over again to like make a sound. And then he gives it to the audience, and the crowd just goes fucking apeshit with it, and everybody's trying to grab it, and like they just start spamming the hell out of it. I don't know, I just think that's fucking hilarious. After Cornelius' performance, we cut to another commercial break, and then we cut to the final set, which is Japanese rap group H.E.R. Their performance is also pretty damn good. I don't understand what they're spitting, but I'm sure it's pretty fire, as the instrumentals are pretty great. And after the performance, everybody including Nigo comes out to a standing ovation. And after that, the 1998 Worldwide Bapehead show comes to a close. Overall, I thought that U.N.K.L.E and Taki Khan's performance was okay, Ben Lee's was pretty mediocre, Money Mark's was just fucking weird, Cornelius was pretty hype, and H.E.R was a great way to end the show. Overall, it's an okay show, but it's nothing I would specifically watch again. Like the 1997 show, the 1998 Worldwide Bapehead show also had merch, like these shirts and posters. The event was even covered by a March 1999 issue of Relax magazine, and a 1999 issue of Bape Mania, the first issue of Bape Mania. On the same year, in 1999, the 3rd annual Worldwide Bapehead show was held. Like the other Bapehead shows, I wasn't able to find much on this one, but what I do know is that it was held on December 26 of 1999, and that Takako Miniwara and Cornelius performed. However, I was only able to find Minikawa's 30-minute performance. There was also t-shirts that were made for the event, and on the back of these shirts, each performer has their face silhouetted on the Bapehead logo. So if you want to decode or analyze the faces, then do it, but it's nothing I would personally lose sleep over. On November 1st to November 8th of 2000, the 4th annual Worldwide Bapehead show was held in Sendai, Fukuoka, Osaka, Nagoya, and Tokyo. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find much on these events, not even videos or even merch. All I was able to find was these 2 posters, and that Nigo, Tagekan, Kudo, James Lavelle, and Ben Lee were confirmed performers. The 5th Bapehead show in 2001 unfortunately isn't covered that well either, as all I could find was this tour shirt. The 6th Bapehead show was held in 2002, and also doesn't have any footage, but we do have a lot of the tour shirts. So if you want to decode who performed at the event via the Baby Milo silhouettes, then let me know in the comments below. 2002 would also bring upon one of Bape's most important moments in American fashion, and hip-hop culture in general, and is arguably why Bape became such a popular brand outside its country. And that's when artist Pharrell Williams started exclusively wearing and promoting Bape as a brand. But before we get to Pharrell's influence on Bape, we need to go over the Neptunes first. And if you don't know who the Neptunes are, here's a quick little game I set up. So here's a list of some popular songs, most of them are from the early 2000s, and count how many you've listened to, and pause the video if necessary. Okay, got your results? Well, guess what? If you've listened to any one of these songs that are on the screen right now, you've unintentionally listened to a song by the Neptunes and didn't even know it. Let me explain. The Neptunes were a producer duo team composed of Chad Hugo and Pharrell Williams. Both of them met each other in Virginia Beach when they both attended a summer band class as kids. They wouldn't become close friends till middle and high school, when they started their own band and put out some mixtapes. During a 1992 high school talent show, they got noticed by producer Teddy Riley, with Riley taking them under his wing. For the next couple of years, Chad and Pharrell would mostly work under Riley, until they produced rapper Noriega's 1998 single Super Thug, the Neptunes' first smash hit. After Super Thug blew up, almost every artist wanted to work with the Neptunes, and throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, the Neptunes would make some of the most remembered and successful songs in their era. Seriously, their discography is absolutely massive and nothing short of legendary. You have to remember that the 2000s was the era of the super producers. Whether it be producers like Just Blaze, Timbaland, Dr. Dre, Jay Dilla, Nujabes, Ninth Wonder, Madlib, Manny Fresh, and even early Kanye West. And the Neptunes were certainly no exception to this. In fact, many say that the word super producer actually comes from the success of the Neptunes. The Neptunes produced songs for artists like Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, Beyonce, Clips, Lupe Fiasco, T.I., Nelly, Mariah Carey, Usher, P. Diddy, Busta Rhymes, Justin Timberlake, Gwen Stefani, Robin Thicke, LL Cool J, Khalees, Ludacris, Britney Spears, and Daft Punk, just to name a few. Some of these artists I just listed are pretty irrelevant today, but you have to remember that these artists were huge at the time, and they were in their prime in terms of their superstardom. The Neptunes had a very recognizable and iconic style when it came to their instrumentals, as they used the same synths and drums from their Korg Triton in almost all of their beats, rarely ever sampling, unlike other producers of the era. I'm not an expert in music theory or anything like that, but there's a psychology to the Neptunes beats which made them so successful in the first place. No matter what you think of each individual song the Neptunes has produced over the span of over 20 years, something you can't deny is that the Neptunes were absolute geniuses when it came to producing music. In 2001, along with childhood friend Shay Haley, Chad and Pharrell formed the band N.E.R.D., or No One Really Ever Dies, and released their first album, In Search Of, in 2002. In 2001, Chad and Pharrell formed their new record label, Star Trek Entertainment, which acquired artists like Clips, Slim Thug, Khalees, Robin Thicke, and Snoop Dogg, just to name a few. The Neptunes even did a compilation album in 2003 called Clones, with Pharrell's iconic first single, Frontin'. In terms of music, music, Chad was more of the silent partner, while Pharrell took much of the spotlight, as Pharrell would usually appear as a non-credited featured artist in some of their produced songs, usually singing the hooks and appearing in the countless music videos for these artists. Another way that Pharrell took the spotlight was in his colorful fashion at the time. There were many elements to Pharrell's fashion at the time, but we'll mostly be focusing on his chains. Pharrell's early chains were made by jewelry legend Jacob Arabo, or going by his nickname Jacob the Jeweler.
And Jacob used to tell me, oh, there's this guy in Japan, you gotta meet him, you know, he's so cool. And he brings in these photos of you with your jewelry. And the only thing is he buys what you make, but then he also gets it in different colors, each piece.
Of course, that guy from Japan was Nigo. And when Pharrell finally traveled to Japan in 2002, Nigo was waiting for him.
So then we're getting ready to go to Japan, and I needed a studio to work in, and Nigo heard about it, and he arranged for us to be able to work there in the studio. But in his studio, he also had he just had this building that had every floor had something different. And he took us downstairs and showed me his showroom, and it was literally like a candy shop of his clothing, his apparel, and his sneakers. And from that point on, I was like, man, I gotta know this guy like this. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
And from there, Pharrell and Nigo would become very close friends. Around this time of the trip, Pharrell also wanted to launch his own clothing brand called Billionaire Boys Club, and its sister brand, Ice Cream. And during a dinner between Pharrell and Nigo on the trip, Pharrell pitched his idea for Billionaire Boys Club, with Nigo loving it. And later that night, Skate Thing would design the famous Billionaire Boys Club astronaut logo. After the trip, Nigo gave Pharrell lots of Bape. So much that Pharrell needed to leave his old clothes in Japan to make room for the new Bape. And when Pharrell went back to America, he started to be sent lots of Bape to his house. Because of the Neptunes' connections to many artists they produced for, Pharrell would share and expose these artists to Bape as a clothing brand, and therefore the brand started to spread with it, probably the most famous being that of Jay-Z, who was about to release his 2002 album The Blueprint 2, The Gift and the Curse, in which the Neptunes produced 4 songs for it. The Blueprint 2 would also have exclusive t-shirts that were made by Bape, which have become some of the rarest Bape t-shirts in existence. Also around 2002, the Neptunes were working on Clips's second album, Lord Willin', and Clips would start to also wear Bape. And throughout the 2000s, Pharrell would always wear Bape, whether it be in the music videos or just wearing it in general. And due to the Neptunes' connections with seemingly every artist in the music industry, a bathing ape started to spread in American pop culture, and more specifically streetwear and hip-hop culture. And this is when Bape truly became the iconic clothing empire we all know of today, as Bape became one of the most coveted fashion brands of its era. In 2003, Pharrell would release the front-end music video, which debuted Billionaire Boys Club, which also had a brief cameo by Nigo himself. Like a bathing ape, Pharrell would start to wear a lot of Billionaire Boys Club and Ice Cream apparel, and the brand would collaborate with Reebok, making their first wave of iconic sneakers. The two brands would also have frequent collaborations, and Bape would also do tour merch for NERD's second album, Fly or Die. And from there, both Bape and Billionaire Boys Club would become two of the most popular brands of its decade. And in 2005, Pharrell would perform at the first American Bape store opening in New York City, signifying that Bape had officially come to America. In 2004, Nigo would release his final solo album called Bape Sounds. It was essentially a compilation album of different artists, blending genres of pop and hip-hop. The album is actually really fire, as it has great instrumentals that blend both old and new hip-hop really well. The only songs that I really don't like are Jumpin' Wine, Nuff Bangarang, and Planet of the Bapes. Aside from that, the album is actually pretty damn good. In fact, the first track of the album, Year 3978, was the original theme that played on Bape's website at the time. However, the fourth track of the album was made by a new rap group, for which this was their first ever song together. The fourth track was called Kamikaze 108 and was comprised of 5 members. The first was Japanese rapper Illmari, who along with longtime middle school friend Ryo Z formed the Japanese rap group Rip Slime, and Ryo Z would later join Illmari on this song, making him the second member of the group. The third member of this group was Japanese rapper and producer Wise, who previously formed Wise and Sun Pub with fellow producer Sun Pub. The fourth member was Japanese rapper Verbal, who was part of the uber-popular Japanese rap group M-Flow. Verbal was definitely the most high-profile member of this song, aside from its final member, which was of course Nigo, the DJ of the group. When asked by Complex senior editor Matt Welty, Verbal discusses how Kamikaze 108 was recorded. It started when Nigo called upon us to record for his album. He was trying to come up with a new concept where he was trying to get all these Japanese MCs on American producers' tracks. I guess he had a lot of friends in the music industry. That's when he was starting to get to know Pharrell. He started with a DJ Shadow track. He was like, yo, can you guys do something with this track? Me and the other guys in the group were friends from a long time ago, before our professional music careers. We were like, yeah, let's do this for Nigo. Let's do this for fun so we can have a track to jam in the clubs. And then that one song turned out to be so dope that instead of saying Nigo featuring 4 people, we were like, yo, we should come up with a name. That's how the name Teriyaki Boyz came up, and that's how we started. The following year, on November 16, 2005, the Teriyaki Boyz would release their first album, Beef or Chicken, which was one of the first albums to be released by the newly formed Def Jam Japan. Nigo's first introduction to hip-hop was through Def Jam acts like the Beastie Boys and LL Cool J, so I'm sure that Nigo was all but excited to have an album released by the same people who inspired him in the first place. The album peaked at number 4 on the Oricon charts, which if you don't know, the Oricon is the Japanese equivalent to the Billboard charts. Critics also gave it favorable reviews at the time. But what do I think of the album? Let's start off with the first track, Eat Intro, which is produced by Beastie Boys member Ad-Rock. It's your simple intro that pays homage to the old Def Jam era of hip-hop, with the added flair of the 2000s generation of rap. And that's really how I would not only describe the album, but also the overall style of the Teriyaki Boyz as a rap group. It's a homage to the rap groups that Nigo grew up on, but it isn't afraid to throw in some new artists and new production styles in the mix. Their style is very cheesy, but that's only because rap in the 80s was very cheesy. It's just baked into their DNA as artists. The second track is The Takeover, and is an okay track with a catchy instrumental and hook. The third track is Heartbreaker, which is by far my favorite song on the album. As some of you can tell by the instrumental, Heartbreaker was actually produced by none other than Daft Punk, who had just released their third album, Human After All, earlier in 2005. Heartbreaker is actually directly sampled from Daft Punk's own song Human After All. And if you're at all familiar with Daft Punk, that Human After All sample is just so recognizable. Though the way that Daft Punk samples it is a bit lazy, it's still extremely catchy and fits well with the whole hip-hop oriented beat. Shortly before Heartbreaker was released, Daft Punk got their very own Bapesta sneaker, which if you don't know what a Bapesta is, it's basically Bape's flagship sneaker that legally ripped off the design of Nike's popular Air Force 1 sneaker. The Daft Punk Bapestas are extremely rare, as only 100 pairs were made and reportedly only 50 pairs were ever sold to the public. As we'll see later in the documentary, Daft Punk isn't the only artist that will be getting his own Bapesta from collaborating with the Teriyaki Boyz. But anyways, the fourth track is Celebrity Deathmatch. I don't really like this one that much, to me it's just way too cheesy. The fifth track is School of Rock, and it doesn't fare much better, as I also think it's pretty corny. The sixth track is Chill Large, which was produced by the Neptunes and features Pharrell Williams. It's a pretty good track with a good Neptunes beat and a catchy hook. This song would later make it to another album for a movie, but we'll cover that in a minute. The seventh track is Shout Out for Delivery, which is again produced by Ad-Rock, and it's okay I guess. The eighth track is Moon the World, which is produced by none other than Cornelius, who brings his more experimental style to producing. Though this track is a very weird one in terms of the production and vocals, it's still good with some good use of synths and an overall poppy vibe to the whole song. The ninth track is Baggy Pants, produced by the legendary hip-hop producer Just Blaze. And for those who don't know who Just Blaze is, he was a hip-hop producer who made some of the biggest hits for Freeway, Cameron, and most notably Jay-Z. He was well known for his use of soul sampling, but on this track he sort of abandons that style. Instead, he uses a more Timbaland or Neptune style. That's the best way I can possibly explain it. And that's not a bad thing, because this is is one of the more catchier and memorable tracks on the album. Overall, I like it. The 10th track is Beef or Chicken, which is again produced by Ad-Rock. This one is okay, but it's just all over the place if you get what I'm saying. The 11th track is You Know What Time It Is, which is produced by hip-hop legend and one half of the rap group Gang Starr, DJ Premier. Aside from being a part of Gang Starr, Premier was a legendary hip-hop producer, and the beat for You Know What Time It Is no exception to Premier's amazing producing skills. The beat truly makes this one of the greatest songs on the album in my opinion. The 12th track is Kamikaze 108, which was produced by DJ Shadow. Although this song is very chaotic, I still really like it, as it sort of blends that old school hip-hop vibe of the album with some modern touches. It's very energetic, and overall it's a good song on the album. The 13th track is Take Outro, which is essentially an outro version of the beginning of the Eat intro, as the instrumental is virtually the same, just with Ad-Rock saying something different. And at last, there's the 14th track, Kamikaze 108 Swisha House Remix, which is basically a chopped and screwed version of Kamikaze 108 that's basically just slowed down. Overall, Beef or Chicken by the Teriyaki Boyz is an okay album, but it definitely hasn't aged well in some areas. But still, there's some classic tracks on the album, with my favorites being Heartbreaker, Chill Large, Baggy Pants, You Know What Time It Is, and both versions of Kamikaze 108. In late 2005, the Teriyaki Boyz had a tour that performed many of the songs on Beef or Chicken. The tour was called the Official Delivery Iccho Tour, and it was performed throughout many venues in Japan, but we'll only be focusing on the one that was held in ZEP Tokyo, as it's the one that was recorded on the official Iccho DVD. And also, if you're wondering about the watermark placed right in the center of the screen, it's because I got this footage from a YouTube channel called History Vault, which mostly posts Lil Wayne live performances, old Pharrell clips, and lost Bape videos, and material from back in the day. And throughout this documentary, you're going to see a lot of clips by him pop up. Or her, you never know. I probably could have just DM'd him to give me like the unwatermarked clips, but I'm kinda shy, so I didn't. Anyways, the tour basically follows the format of the album Beef or Chicken, which means that they just perform every song on Beef or Chicken as like a live album or something. It starts off with the Teriyaki Boyz being encapsulated like action figures with different colored Bape hoodies on them. Then they come out performing the takeover and the crowd goes apeshit. Or should I say, Bape shit. I can't explain why, but some of these songs just work so much better as live songs rather than recorded ones, as I think the energy is just way better and matches the songs better. The stage, lighting, and setting is also pretty cool looking, and it fits the vibe of the show well. Overall, the Official Delivery Iccho Tour is pretty good, and you could just tell that everybody involved, from the Teriyaki Boyz to the crowd, had a blast during it. My favorite performance is the one for Heartbreaker. The crowd is just super hyped, and it just matches the energy of the Teriyaki Boyz. And also the performance of Kamikaze 108, in which specifically made Bape $100 bills were made and thrown into the audience. There was also additional footage released on the Official Delivery Iccho DVD, with the 45-minute documentary Teriyaki Boyz Inside the Lunchbox. The Inside the Lunchbox documentary chronicles the Official Delivery Iccho Tour, and the Teriyaki Boyz performing at all the different venues. This documentary doesn't have any translations or any captions, or at least in the History Vault channel's upload of the DVD, so I have no idea what anybody is saying, except for some lines when Verbal speaks English to Japanese, as Verbal is the only member of the Teriyaki Boyz who can speak English, due to his mixed upbringing in Boston. Actually, Wise can also speak English as well, but I didn't know this till editing the documentary. Though I can't understand what they're saying, you can still tell that the Teriyaki Boyz were having a total blast during this tour, and that spirit transcends onto the audience. The documentary also shows Nigo lacing the Teriyaki Boyz with new Bape. Most famously, the Bape Teriyaki Boyz varsity jacket. The concert venues would also have stand-up Bape shops near the entrance, where presumably Teriyaki Boyz themed Bape merch was sold. Speaking of the Teriyaki Boyz Bape, there was a lot of Teriyaki Boyz themed Bape that was released at this time. However, some of these items I'm unable to find out which year they came out in, but the general timeline of the Teriyaki Boyz themed Bape was released from 2005 to 2010. A lot of clothing is also shown off in this documentary though. Verbal recalls, Nigo was always our star. I looked up to him. When this whole movement happened, we were like, we are down. He would definitely lace us up with gear, and he would be like, yo, should we wear suits for the music video? He would create these Teriyaki Boyz suits just for fun because he was really into the Beatles. We were definitely thankful that he provided us with the gear, but I was more about creating the hype, the excitement, the colorfulness, and all this new shit dropping all the time. The way he was doing business, the turnaround for this gear was so quick that people didn't know how to compete. That was fun. It was very exciting and stimulating. And just like the hip-hop record labels before them, like Death Row, Bad Boy, and Rockefeller Records, the Teriyaki Boyz were given their very own chains. In a way, the Teriyaki Boyz were sort of like an 80s cartoon version of a rap group, because all 80s cartoons were solely created to promote toys, and the toys would in turn promote the show back. In the same way, the Teriyaki Boyz promoted Bape, and Bape promoted them in return. Overall, the documentary is pretty good. It's almost like a time capsule into the not so old past. And you can tell that the Teriyaki Boyz were just having a great time throwing these concerts. The official Delivery Iccho DVD also has some bonus footage and behind the scenes extras, like an exclusive interview from the Neptunes themselves. It's not really anything important, but it's just some cool footage overall. The DVD also includes all the music videos that were shot for the Beef or Chicken album, the most famous of which being the one for Heartbreaker. And yes, that is a custom camo Bape Rolls Royce in the background. You know, as much as your favorite rapper flexes about his wealth and material possessions, just remember that Nigo makes them all look like shit in comparison. Speaking of Heartbreaker, the Teriyaki Boyz would perform for the first time on Japanese television, on the Japanese TV channel Music Station in late 2005 or early 2006, in which the Teriyaki Boyz performed Heartbreaker. In 2006, the first Fast and the Furious spin-off film was released, which was The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. The Fast and the Furious films were always known for their original soundtrack albums, dating back to the first film that was released in 2001. These soundtracks are mostly composed of popular rock and hip-hop of the era, which leaves some of these soundtracks being extremely outdated and laughable today. Since Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift takes place in, well, Tokyo, it makes sense that the soundtrack should reflect upon the setting. So Warner Brothers decided to pick the Teriyaki Boyz to do a song for the soundtrack. This song is perhaps the most popular Teriyaki Boyz song to ever be released, and is probably why you clicked on this video in the first place. Even if you've never heard of the Teriyaki Boyz until now, you've probably heard this song before. This song is of course Tokyo Drift Fast and Furious. Tokyo Drift was produced by none other than the Neptunes, which explains why the beat is so catchy and memorable. Though being a very cheesy song in its lyrics, Tokyo Drift is extremely catchy in its beats. It's seriously one of the best beats the Neptunes has ever made. The Neptunes have this particular talent when it comes to producing, which turns any outdated song from the 2000s into a guilty pleasure in terms of its instrumentals. However, I don't want to give the Neptunes complete credit when it comes to making this song, as every member of the Teriyaki Boyz, including Nigo, gives it their all, or at least that's what I think they're doing. Today, most people only know the Teriyaki Boyz because of this song, as this song is mostly remembered for being a meme and also being a part of a nostalgic mid-2000s blockbuster film. The Teriyaki Boyz also had another track on the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift soundtrack, that being Cho Large, which if you remember was already on the Beef or Chicken album, and was the only song on the album that was produced by the Neptunes. Relating to the Neptunes, N.E.R.D. would also have a song on the soundtrack, that being the song She Wants to Move, which was already on their album Fly or Die. Pharrell also has a solo song appear in the film called Mamacita, but it was never released on the official soundtrack, although the movie credits it. Speaking of Pharrell, on July 25th, 2006, he would release his first solo album, In My Mind. The cover was designed by none other than Skate Thing, or at least I'm presuming it was, presenting Pharrell in the iconic Baby Milo silhouette. In My Mind had several featured artists on the tracks, like Pusha T, Gwen Stefani, Nelly, Snoop Dogg, Jay-Z, and first-time collaborator Kanye West. In 2006, Kanye was pretty much on a winning streak at the time, coming off his 2004 debut album The College Dropout and his 2005 sequel Late Registration, earning Mr. West with the popularity side of his songs being high on the Billboard charts, and the critical acclaim of winning Best Hip Hop Album twice in a row at the Grammys. He He was also a featured artist and producer on many other artists' singles and albums. But in 2006, he did a first-time collab with Pharrell Williams. Pharrell and Kanye had known each other since 2003, ever since they were both producers on Jay-Z's The Black album, as both were featured in the 2004 documentary Fade to Black. Pharrell also visited Kanye in the studio when he was making songs for The College Dropout. In 2006, Kanye would appear on Pharrell's solo album In My Mind, making the single #1. As we've seen from the story so far, Pharrell would always expose fellow artists to Bape via their collaborations on songs. But by 2006, Kanye was well aware of Bape as a brand, as he was already seen wearing it and buying it. As we should all know by now, Kanye was a huge fan of fashion, and desperately wanted to make his own brand even when he was a kid. Knowing Pharrell had huge connections to Nigo, Kanye would ask Pharrell for a way to get in contact with Nigo. And presumably, Kanye West would form a relationship with Nigo in the summer of 2006, appearing as a model for Bape in the summer/spring and fall/winter issues of Bape's Emu magazine. Also, quick fun fact, the orange Bape jacket that Kanye is wearing here is also the one he wore in the game's Wouldn't Get Far music video. But in early 2007, Kanye had one of the most epic collabs with not only Bape, but also the Teriyaki Boyz. First, Kanye would have the honor of designing his very own Bapesta sneaker, which were called the College Dropout Bapestas. These sneakers released on January 2nd, 2007, making them a landmark achievement in Kanye West's fashion career, as these were the first shoes that were ever designed, released, and sold to the public that were made by Kanye West himself. He had designed Nike and Reebok sneakers in the past, but these never went past prototype phases. Not only were these the most iconic Bapestas, but they're also the most rare, as many sneaker collectors value these shoes as holy grails, with resale prices being worth thousands of dollars today on resale sites. The second collaboration came in the form of the Teriyaki Boyz single I Still Love Her, which was released on January 24th, 2007. If you don't know the Teriyaki Boyz from Tokyo Drift, then you probably know them from this song. The single was produced by Kanye himself and of course features a verse by him. It's certainly not one of his best verses, as I think he was saving his good lines for his third album, Graduation, but still the lyrics fit with the feel-good energy of the instrumental. The song was loosely based on the song I Used to Love Her by Kanye's close friend, collaborator, and fellow Chicago rapper Common. Kanye produced the song in Japan at Nigo's Tokyo studio in late 2006, with Verbal being the translator of sorts. Kanye and Verbal hit it off with each other, and Verbal teaches Kanye about some Japanese slang and old Japanese hip-hop songs, which Kanye then tries to reference in the lyrics.
What was some of the hits? There's a real big song from back in the 90s called Konya wa Boogie Back. Like Boogie Back Tonight, that's what it means. Konya wa Boogie Back. I say Konya? Konya wa Boogie Back. Oh, that sound right? Pretty good, yeah. Konya wa Boogie Back. Konya wa Boogie Back.
It's very similar to my name.
Konya wa
Boogie Back. Konya wa Boogie Back. Konya wa.
Konya, yeah.
Konya wa Boogie Back.
Yeah.
Motherfucker, fuck that back. Konya wa. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, that's right.
Konya wa Boogie Back. Konya wa Kanye wa. Yeah, Konya wa.
This is shown in the behind the scenes for the song's making, which was featured on Ni Goldeneye, Nigo's MTV Japan show that went on for 38 episodes. Overall, the making of I Still Love Her is pretty interesting, since it's not that often that we see footage of Kanye in the studio performing, especially from this time period. You can even see him struggling to rap out his lyrics while recording the vocals.
Okay. I can get it better. Let me try you.
Alright, just keep this though. You want to keep this tape?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, keep it there. Okay.
Say that it's audible blow, just like a chick giving oral, yo. Lick my black, get the cream like the Oreo. Same thing.
Once again, do it again.
Hit the track, get the cream, same story, yo. Trick that on a money, yo, and Porio. This Mr. Porno.
Alright, do it again.
Yeah, I know. This is what y'all all looking forward to.
Once again.
Simply, cause I'm going simply.
What kind of things you looking for? Like, you mean hip hop? No.
Yeah, dude.
Talking about like
You ever punch in? You don't like punching in, right?
I do it sometimes. So.
Because the take that you kind of messed up towards the end, like a couple takes ago, that was hot all the way up to the manger part.
Oh man.
But let's do it because you're hot right now, you know.
Yeah. I usually just say the stuff all the way through unless I got a breath problem. I just gotta learn it.
All right.
That's the problem when you're not writing it. I'm just reading it off of my memory. Like,
yeah, I know.
All right, let's go.
All right, let's do it.
And we can hear that some of the lyrics were vastly different from the finished product.
Yo, it's more important though, you feel the pressure though. My whole oral is orchestral, but way fresher though, because it simply put the symphony on a symphony. When it niggas bite you, so I got MC, it's empty, the empty. It's just me, listen to the loser, to get grooves on, used to get booed, now in Shaboom, way too exclusive. Rappers are in danger, this flow here was born. No. Dude, take it back.
It takes Kanye a while to finish the recording of the vocals, but of course he eventually does.
I'm the new high, I want your weed back, yeah. I still love a Honto E rap.
Yeah. It's tight. Nice.
You can also see Kanye's manager and friend Don C, who's in the studio with him. After Kanye is finished recording his verse, he listens to the track one more time, takes a picture with the Teriyaki Boyz, says goodbye, and leaves. A month or two later, the single was released on CD, with some copies even coming with this t-shirt. Although I'm not able to verify if the t-shirt was released like this, or if the t-shirt was just released separately. The cover of the CD was probably made by Skate Thing, but for now it's uncredited as to who did it. Overall, I Still Love Her is a great single for not only the Teriyaki Boyz, but also Kanye as well, as the song greatly exemplifies both of the artist's strengths, and is a really feel-good song in general. It's probably my favorite Teriyaki Boyz song, and no, it's not just because Kanye's on it. It's because of the hook and the instrumental for me personally, as the song just makes me feel good in general while I listen to it. Overall, it's as catchy as it is charming. I love it. Later in 2007, Kanye would model for the Bape magazine for its summer/spring and winter/fall magazine. He also models this with the Teriyaki Boyz by his side. And Kanye uses his time in Japan to film the music video for I Still Love Her. You can tell this because they're wearing the exact same clothing in the music video that they were wearing in the magazine. It's kind of a weird music video, as all of it was filmed on what looks like a webcam of the time. Actually, it may just be like a digital camera of the time. And everything is also on this fictitious website called Teriyaki Tube. This was one of the first music videos that I could remember that actually referenced YouTube as a whole. And you have to remember that at this time, YouTube videos practically all looked the same, with none of the fancy production quality we have today. Back then, most YouTube videos were just people talking in front of their webcams, although there were of course exceptions. Still though, the music video is pretty good, and it kind of encapsulates how YouTube was back in the day. It's almost like an internet time capsule. Like the song itself, the music video for I Still Love Her is pretty feel good and charming in nature, and you can tell that everybody was just having fun with it. However, the music video wasn't released online till November 2008, as it was probably already shown on Japanese or American TV at the time. Speaking of Japanese TV, Kanye West and the Teriyaki Boyz performed live on the Japanese TV show Music Station on January 26, 2007, making it the Teriyaki Boyz' second appearance on the show and the first time that Kanye ever performed on Japanese television, or at least to my knowledge. I think it was about a year ago when a video of this live performance was posted to YouTube by a channel named H.E.R. I remember the video blowing up earlier last year, earning 1 million views in under like a month, and it was reposted to several other websites. For many new to this video, including myself, it was really weird seeing it for the first time, as it was Kanye West, the superstar we all know of, performing with this Japanese rap group that none of us have probably never heard of. And not only that, but the song and performance somehow was really great. I remember the comments being amazed that this video even existed, and practically every comment was very positive towards the video, from both Kanye fans and surprise onlookers. However, this performance has been deleted from his channel for unknown reasons, most likely a copyright strike. But since this video was posted everywhere, it was thankfully saved, and you can now find re-uploads of it if you search hard enough for them.
Kanye West, that's Dozo Euroscoop.
Kanye would continue that feel-good attitude of I Still Love Her in his third album, Graduation, which was released on September 11, 2007. And that's pretty much the end of the story when it comes to I Still Love Her, but not for the Teriyaki Boyz. Later in 2007, the Teriyaki Boyz would perform in New York's Tokyo Music Festival, which was held on September 22, 2007. The Teriyaki Boyz would perform alongside legendary hip-hop artists like Cool DJ Red Alert, Rakim, and even MF Doom, rest in peace. But in all honesty, it was probably just a Doom bot anyways. And if you don't know what that is, then just look it up. I couldn't find any photos or video of MF Doom's performance at the event, so there's really no way to tell if it was a Doom bot. Anyways, while the Teriyaki Boyz were in New York, there was a short documentary that was filmed called The Teriyaki Boyz in New York, which was probably aired on MTV Japan or something like that. It's not really confirmed. The documentary mostly consists of the Teriyaki Boyz exploring New York, and it's pretty dope. It shows them going to Hot 97, they go to Jacob & Co, buy some jewelry, they go to this toy store, which I think is the same one from the movie Big, you know, with Tom Hanks, because it has like that same big piano. They go to some restaurants along the way, they attend this roof party, then the next day passes and they go to the New York City Bape store and take a picture with some guests, with one of the employees being none other than Kid Cudi, almost 2 years before his first studio album dropped. As before his music career took off, Cudi worked at the New York Bape store for several months. While in the store, they signed some Bape clothes for customers. And finally, later that night, they end up at the concert venue and perform to a very packed and crowded audience. It's a pretty good performance, and I think everybody seems to be having a great time. After the performance, they celebrate with some drinks backstage, and they go to this Japanese restaurant to further celebrate, and then the documentary ends. Overall, it's okay, it's just nice to see the Teriyaki Boyz walking around in public. But now, we jump to 2008. More specifically, April of 2008, where the 8th Worldwide Bapehead Show was held, as the last Bapehead Show was held in 2003. The 2008 Worldwide Bapehead Show was held on April 10, 2008 in Hong Kong, and I believe in other parts of Japan, but I was unable to verify this. The 2008 Worldwide Bapehead Show probably had the best lineup of any of the previous Bapehead shows, as the lineup included N.E.R.D., Kanye West, and of course the Teriyaki Boyz. There were also Bape shirts that were made for the event. And fun fact, this is the first and only time that Kanye is ever drawn in a Baby Milo silhouette. Even though this is the best lineup in the Worldwide Bapehead Show history, the professional recordings have never been released to the public, although there have been official slivers of footage that have been released. I believe that one of these pieces of footage was taken from the 2008 Teriyaki Boyz DVD World Tour, but I was unable to find a copy of it online. All we really have is audience recordings of the event, and because it's 2008, it's literally in flip phone quality. It suffers the same fate as Kanye West's legendary Glow in the Dark tour, in which there were professional recordings of the event, but they were never released to the public, and all we have is poor bootlegs. Because, you know, who the hell wants to listen to a live album? Going into 2009, Bape was still an extremely popular clothing brand, and because of this fact, you may think that Bape was also financially successful at this time. Well, you would actually be wrong, since Bape was over $50 million in debt at the time. This may shock and confuse you at first, but it all starts to make sense in retrospect. The reason why Bape lost so much money at this time when they were gaining so much of it was really because of Nigo's rather poor business decisions and moves, as he had really high ambitions for Bape as a brand in general. During 2006, Bape hit its cultural and financial peak, and because of this, Nigo thought that the skies were the limit when it came to Bape's potential to take over not only the fashion world, but just pop culture in general. Through 2006, 7, and 8, Nigo would open several Bape stores across the world, including spin-off stores like the Baby Milo store, the Bape Kids store, the Busy Workshop, and the Bape, or Busy Working Lady store. Nigo not only opened all these stores, but he also opened a Bape record label, a Bape cafe, and I shit you not, a Bape hair salon called Bape Cuts. Though Bape was still a very successful brand at this time period, opening all these stores was the financial equivalent of pouring water into a bathtub with a hole in it. Though you're gaining lots of money, you end up losing more than what you wanted to gain. 2009 was the boiling point of Bape's financial failures, as because of all the loans that both Nigo and Bape took out, which in 2009 totaled up to 4.31 billion yen of debt, or in US currency, $52.97 million million in debt. Nigo had two options. Either A, file for bankruptcy under Japan's civil rehabilitation law and end Bape then and there, or B, sell his company that he created from the ground up for a chance that it may live for another couple of years, under a new company without him. Nigo most certainly didn't want to choose A, but he was still forced to choose B, which he chose. On August 31st of 2009, Nigo sold Bape to the Hong Kong fashion/investment company IT for a 90% stakes in Bape. Because of the contract that he signed with IT, Nigo would still remain the creative director of Bape until 2013. Although news of this didn't come out till 2011, Nigo's close friends and collaborators probably knew what was going on behind the scenes. Or at least I'm guessing they did. And some of these friends of Nigo lost interest in wearing Bape as a brand out of respect for Nigo's loss. Both Kanye and Pharrell had stopped wearing Bape around this time, as Kanye had lost interest in streetwear and was more focused on designer brands. He had also just cancelled his upcoming brand Pastel in 2009, which was going to be distributed by Nigo. And Pharrell was solely focused on Billionaire Boys Club, as well as dabbling into designer fashion as well. Though it's not confirmed, the Teriyaki Boyz probably knew about Nigo's struggles firsthand. And I'm guessing that's why they released their last album in 2009, that being Serious Japanese, the Teriyaki Boyz' second and last studio album. Serious Japanese came out on February 3rd, 2009 and peaked at number 3 on the Oricon charts. The album cover shows the Teriyaki Boyz in action figure form, which were actual real-life action figures that were sold. Verbal recalls getting made into an action figure as, quote, "That was surreal. Nigo's not a man of many words. Many people talk but don't walk. This guy just walks. One day he shows up and he's like, yo, check this out. And he just has millions of our figures lined up. He was like one of those guys who just showed up in the studio with a huge chain like nothing happened. We'd be getting fucked up, and he'd come out with this Audemars Piguet that's like $1 million all baguette. He's always coming through with the drip, you know. When he made those figures, it was like an extension of when he rapped the Rolls-Royce Phantom. He makes those things like it's a celebration, like, yo, the album was dope, let's make these figures and surprise everyone. It's his way of entertaining everyone around him. Though it was released in early 2009, the Teriyaki Boyz were working on this album ever since 2007 and especially 2008. The first track of the album is Please Come Intro, produced by Ad-Rock, which is your basic album intro that's voiced and produced by Ad-Rock, just like the last album opening. The second track of the album is Work That, featuring Pharrell and Chris Brown. Out of every Teriyaki Boyz song that's ever been released, I can honestly say that this is the worst one I think they've ever made, or at least to me it is. Even the beat by the Neptunes and a feature from Pharrell can't even save this song, it's that bad. Even the music video sucks for this song. Overall, it's the first Teriyaki Boyz song that I simply do not recommend. Before Serious Japanese was released, this was one of the singles that came out before it on January 13th, 2009. It just sucks that they chose this song to be one of the singles, but it was probably only chosen because it had the baggage of featuring both Pharrell and Chris Brown. But hey, at least they seem to be having a good time shooting the music video. Well, except for Chris Brown, who wasn't there for obvious reasons. Anyways, the third track is After 5 AM, which is thankfully much better. It was produced by Japanese producer Towa T and features artist Mademoiselle Yulia. Verbal previously met Yulia at a Japanese DJ event, and later in 2009, both Verbal and Yulia would be featured on Towa T's album Big Fun, on the song Y.O.R. After 5 AM is one of my favorite tracks on the album, and it has this really cool, like, sounding pop vibe to the whole song. Overall, it's a pretty good track. The fourth track on the album is Tokyo Drift Fast and Furious, which was already released in 2006 for the Tokyo Drift soundtrack. But to reiterate, Tokyo Drift is an extremely catchy song, and whether you love it or hate it, it's still the Teriyaki Boyz' most successful and popular song, and is what they're most remembered for today. Overall, it's an iconic track. The fifth song in the album is Sweet Girl featuring artist Dondria, and produced by Jermaine Dupri. This one too is also really good and has that pop vibe to the whole song, and Wise even uses some auto-tune. Overall, this song is another one of my favorites on the album. The sixth track is Teriyaki King, which features Kanye West and Big Sean and is also produced by Kanye himself. According to Verbal, this was actually the first song that they ever recorded with Kanye. Verbal recalls, he was already super famous by then. We knew of him, but when he came through, it was the whole meshing of fashion and music. That's where I really got to know Kanye, and I learned a lot through his process and Nigo's. And we just went off and started chatting in the studio. That's when I got to really know him, and a part of our conversation went into his lyrics. When we were in the studio talking, he was just about to get into the booth. So I was like, Kanye, don't you need to write your lyrics? He was like, what? Never. He was like, that's a good line. Verbal asked me, do I need a pen right now? Not right now. Then he went into the studio and said that and went off with the whole verse, so it was really live. Teriyaki King is good and catchy, but it's not as great as I Still Love Her. But I actually think that Kanye's verse in Teriyaki King is better than his verse on I Still Love Her. Overall, it's a good track though. The 7th track is Fifth Element, produced and featuring Cornelius. Since it's the only song on the album with Cornelius on it, it also happens to be the weirdest. If you've ever listened to one of those worst beat ever created videos, it kind of sounds like that, with the seemingly random 808 drums in the background. More like cowbells, but you get what I'm saying. It's an okay track, but it's definitely the weirdest on the whole album, but it's not as bad as Work That. The 8th track on the album is Serious Japanese, and this one is pretty good too. It has a great classic style hip hop instrumental, and the hook by Wise is really catchy. Overall, this one is pretty damn good. The 9th track on the album is Zoc On, which was produced by the Neptunes and features not only Pharrell but also Busta Rhymes. Zoc On was actually already released as a single and a music video in 2008. Overall, this track is okay, but it definitely hasn't aged well, or at least to me it hasn't. The 10th song in the album is Can't Bake That Fape, which features and is produced by Ad-Rock, and also features Taki Khan. I don't really like this track, as like Fifth Element, it has these like weird synths in the background that just play at random with like barely any rhythm. Again, it sounds like one of those worst beat ever created type videos. Overall, this one isn't that good, but again, it's not as bad as Work That. The 11th track on the album is It's Sumo, It's More, which was produced by Super Dave West. This one is actually one of my favorites on the album, as it has this really great instrumental that screams classic era hip hop all over it. Overall, It's Sumo, It's More is really good. The 11th track on the album is I Still Love Her, which we've already covered, but it's easily my favorite song on the album. The 13th track on the album is Get the Hell Out Intro, which is your standard outro by Ad-Rock like it was on the last album. And finally, the 14th track on the album is a remix of Tokyo Drift that includes verses by Fam Lay and Pusha T, which are pretty good. Overall, for their second and last album, Serious Japanese is an overall good record, which showed definite improvement from Beef or Chicken. My favorite tracks are of course I Still Love Her, Tokyo Drift, Sweet Girl, Teriyaki King, Serious Japanese, It's Sumo, It's More, and After 5 AM. My least favorite tracks on the album are Zoc On, Can't Bake That Fape, Fifth Element, and most definitely Work That. Overall, though it's not a perfect album and maybe hasn't aged well in some areas, Serious Japanese was certainly a good album to go out on. There was also of course some Bape merch to go along with the album. The Teriyaki Boyz would also perform for the final time on the Japanese music station show, appropriately performing It's Sumo, It's More. In the summer of 2009, the Teriyaki Boyz embarked on their last tour together, that being the Do You Like Japan tour. This was documented in the Delicious Japanese DVD via a documentary, but I was unable to find a copy of it online. In fact, I wasn't able to find any footage at all for the tour, well except the one you're looking at right now. However, Delicious Japanese wasn't just a DV, as it also came with a mixtape. And by the way, both the DVD and the mixtape were released together on December 12, 2009. The mixtape mostly features songs that we've already covered, and remixes that aren't that important to cover in the first place. But one song that I actually think is kind of important to cover is Living the Life. But why is this song so important, you ask? Well, because it features Jay-Z, and this song came out right after he released his platinum album The Blueprint 3, which, fun fact, was the album that dethroned Elvis Presley's record for the most #1 albums of all time for a solo artist. I know that Jay-Z had previously done merch with Bape back in 2002 for The Blueprint 2, but this collab just still seems very far-fetched to me. It's like one of those 1 in a million type deals, but I guess the Teriyaki Boyz were that that 1%. And this song is actually really good, one of my favorites by the Teriyaki Boyz. And the beat by Jermaine Dupri is also pretty good. However, Delicious Japanese was the last piece of Teriyaki Boyz media that was ever released, and the group would unofficially split up on good terms. And like that, the story of the Teriyaki Boyz is over, though it never ended in sadness or betrayal or anything like that, unlike other bands or rap groups of the past. But that's not really the end of the story, as you're probably asking where everyone is right now. First, let's start with the minor players of the story, that being Kanye, Pharrell, and maybe even Scathing. Of course, there were many other minor players, but these three are definitely the most important minor players. We'll start off with Kanye. So after the Teriyaki Boyz collab on I Still Love Her and Teriyaki King, Kanye West would release his third album Graduation in late 2007 and 808s and Heartbreak in late 2008. Around this time, Kanye was working on his new fashion brand Pastel, which was actually going to be distributed by Nigo, similar to what he did for Pharrell for Billionaire Boys Club. The brand was teased through 2007 to 2009 and was set for a release date in late 2009, but something else would happen to Kanye in late 2009, and because of this, Kanye would have to cancel his new brand. He also canceled it as he wasn't really into streetwear and wanted to step his foot into high fashion territory, as Kanye had previously made sneakers with Louis Vuitton in early 2009. He was also working with Nike to create a sneaker with them, which was of course the Air Yeezys, which came out in the summer of 2009. And we all know the story from there, with Kanye leaving Nike in 2014 to create sneakers for Adidas and most recently clothing for Gap. And along the way, Kanye has of course made multiple hit albums since then. Pharrell's journey into fashion isn't much different, as after his 2009 collaborations with the Teriyaki Boyz, he would still own and design clothes for Billionaire Boys Club. But for some undisclosed reason, in 2011, Pharrell sold Billionaire Boys Club to the company Iccho. But in 2016, Pharrell would buy back Billionaire Boys Club from Iccho for 50% stakes in the company, and reportedly he still owns the company to this day. But Pharrell hasn't just been preoccupied with Billionaire Boys Club, as he's also collaborated with Chanel, Montclair, U.N.K.L.E, and most recently and still going, Adidas. Like Kanye, Pharrell has his own line of Adidas sneakers, that being the popular Human Race line of sneakers. Pharrell has also recently started a skincare line also called Human Race. I guess this plays into the joke that Pharrell is secretly a vampire, because you know, he doesn't age. Like at all. Scathing wasn't that much of a player in the story of the Teriyaki Boyz, but I thought I'd quickly cover him just for the hell of it. So after designing some of the most iconic designs in fashion history, Scathing just decided to make his very own fashion brand called Cav Empt. The brand is a mixture of both streetwear and high fashion alike, and has become a popular and up-and-coming brand ever since its launch in 2012. Now that's it for the minor players of the story, now let's get to the major ones. First, there's Rio Z, who after 2009 would join up with Illmari again to go back to Rip Slime. And just to clarify, they never left Rip Slime in the first place, and were still part of Rip Slime during their time with the Teriyaki Boyz. However, in 2018, Rip Slime would spontaneously end, as fellow member Sue was hit with allegations that he was cheating on his wife, and the group just wasn't the same after that. In 2013, Rio Z would form a new rap group called Hasta La Vista, but their first and only album was released in 2014, so it's probably a safe bet that it's broken off. In 2012, Illmari would form a Japanese rock band, with artists Kosen, Yaz, and Shonazuki called the Beatmos, with them only releasing 2 albums in 2012 and 2013 respectively. As far as I'm concerned, Illmari and Rio Z don't make music anymore. Neither does Wise, as after 2009 he stopped making music. However, Verbal would still have a successful career in music, as he would return to his popular Japanese hip-hop group M.Flow in 2012, as M.Flow had previously been on hiatus ever since 2008. In 2011, Verbal would release his first and only solo album, Visionaire, which featured artists like Drake, Nicki Minaj, and Lil Wayne. And remember, these artists were huge back in 2011. I mean, they still are, but you know, this was like their peak, you know, with like Young Money. Aside from music, Verbal has also dabbled in the fashion, creating the fashion brand Ambush in 2008 with his wife U.N.K.L.E. The brand had its developments all the way back in the Teriyaki Boy days, with Verbal recalling Kanye's reaction to his chains, saying, quote, "Kanye and I started dabbling with fashion and talking about a lot of stuff, and he came to the studio and saw my chain and he was like, yo, what is that? That's pre-Ambush days. So I was just making chains for myself and for my friends. And he was like, make me one. And we just went off and started chatting in the studio." The chains that Verbal is referring to are the signature POW chains that Ambush would later make, becoming their most famous designs, with Verbal saying, "When we started Ambush, it was a two-man design team scrambling to get our hands on t-shirt designs. Then I went on to designing jewelry for people with Yoon. That's around the time that I started to have the POW idea. When we started making those colorful POW rings and chains, Kanye and everyone around us started wearing it. We weren't really anticipating business at all. When it blew up, it was insane because we were not anticipating any business. We were shipping out boxes from our apartments. We needed a storage, so we bought a nearby building and rented out a few rooms and started doing it there. The rest is history." In fact, the chains that Ambush makes are perhaps their most popular and valued products that they make. But Ambush has also had multiple collabs over the years, whether it be collabs with Bape, Reebok, Sacai, Converse, Off-White, Louis Vuitton, and most recently Nike with their SB Dunks, which sold out immediately. U.N.K.L.E has also worked with Dior, with her becoming the lead of Dior's jewelry design under current creative director Kim Jones. But in 2016, Verbal would join Nigo again in the new Japanese rap group Honest Boyz, which also features artists Sway, Nato, and Mandy. Though the Honest Boyz name is very similar to that of the Teriyaki Boyz, the groups have virtually nothing in common, aside from the name being similar and having Nigo and Verbal in it. In a way, it's sort of like a spiritual successor to the Teriyaki Boyz, just without Ryozi, Ilmari, or Wise. Over the span of 4 years, they've released a couple of singles, like Part-Time Hero, Yo, Heartbreakers, Beeping Sounds, and most recently Sakura. Their musical style isn't really my taste, as they blend modern pop music with rap, which isn't particularly my thing. It's certainly not bad, and if you're into that sort of style, then it wouldn't hurt to give them a listen. In 2018, the Honest Boyz collaborated with Pharrell Williams on the track Tokyo Dip. And in 2019, the Honest Boyz collaborated with Lil Uzi Vert on the track Electricity, which was actually featured as the ending song to the film Detective Pikachu, with Pharrell producing the beat. I don't really like Tokyo Dip. Again, it's not bad, but it's just not my thing. And Electricity is actually kind of fire. If you've ever wanted Lil Uzi Vert on an anime outro type song, then this is pretty damn good. It's one of those songs that you would never think would happen in a million years, let alone be any good. But it's easily my favorite track that the Honest Boyz have put out. It's also become one of my favorite Uzi tracks. It should have been on Eternal Take if you ask me. Overall, Electricity is a super good song that's extremely catchy and feel good, as I really vibe with this song. Also, can we just acknowledge the fact that Lil Uzi Vert is technically now canon in the Pokemon universe? I know that Pokemon fans are typing like 5-page essays in the comments right now on how this isn't true, and that Detective Pikachu isn't canon or something, but fuck it, Uzi is now canon in the Pokemon universe, or at least to me he is. And even if Uzi isn't canon in the Pokemon universe, it's still super dope that he got his own song on a soundtrack for a Pokemon movie. That must have been every kid's dream in the 2000s. Overall, Electricity is a super good track. And another track that I really like from the Honest Boyz was their last single, Sakura, which was also pretty dope. All the other songs by the Honest Boyz aren't really my thing, but if you're into modern pop combined with hip hop, then check it out. The Honest Boyz of course leads us to the final major player of the Teriyaki Boyz, that being Nigo himself. As we've covered before, Nigo sold Bape in 2009 to the Hong Kong company IT, in which Nigo would still be named creative director till 2013, when Nigo would officially leave Bape. Ironically enough, Nigo left Bape on the 20th anniversary of Bape's creation. It was a bittersweet ending for him to say the least. But after leaving Bape, Nigo of course had another fashion brand up his sleeve, that being Human Made, which he technically founded in 2010. The graphic designs were of course created by Skate Thing, and the clothing itself was made to resemble pre-1960s clothing, with its focus on vintage-looking denim pieces. Nigo's fashion sense has definitely grown with his age, but I think that's a good thing. In fact, Nigo reflects his age in the brand, with Human Made's tagline being gears for futuristic teenagers.
まあ常にこう ティーンエイジャーでいたいっていう自分の気持ちというか、それをこの言葉にしたという。
Speaking of Nigo himself, one thing that I've lightly touched over in this documentary is Nigo's truly insane collection of pop culture material from over the years. This not only includes fashion, but also movie memorabilia, most notably his Planet of the Apes collection and his Star Wars collection. He used to do these MTV Cribs style tours of his house, and let me tell you, Nigo pretty much puts everybody to shame that's ever showed their expensive house on a video or something like that. You may see your favorite artists flexing about their house or their collections, but remember, there will never be somebody as baller as Nigo was, unless they're like a legit professional collector. He had literally every Star Wars figure that was ever released in boxed, including the original rocket shooting Boba Fett action figure prototype, which is perhaps the rarest Star Wars figure in the world, or at least the last time I checked it was. However, in late 2015, to celebrate the release of The Force Awakens, Nigo sold his prized Star Wars collection at $250,000. However, Nigo still owns a lot of baller shit in his collection, whether it be his vintage Planet of the Apes collection, his vintage Beatles collection, his car collection, or his collection of vintage fashion and prototype Bape units that he still has stored in a warehouse in Tokyo. It's like his version of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, with all types of magical wonders of the world in there. Hell, he even has the poster of the Gene Wilder version of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory on display in the warehouse. Anyways, back to Human Made. Though Human Made is somewhat of a popular brand, it's nowhere near as popular as Bape was back in the day. But I also think that's a good thing, since I think that's what Nigo needs. That being a successful brand, but not like a worldwide captivating sort of one. Human Made has collaborated with N.E.R.D, Billionaire Boys Club, the Beatles, Louis Vuitton, Adidas, and even KFC. Overall, Human Made seems like a great brand for Nigo right now, as it's not just another douchebag hypebeast brand.
Do you have any extras? Sorry, I forgot it. I just got over here as quick as I could. Cactus Jack sent me. Thanks. Do you have any Supreme ones? No. I only wear Supreme. No. Oh, fuck. They could at least put like Astroworld on a mask or something.
And some of the designs are pretty fire in my opinion. But what isn't fire, or according to many fashion critics and consumers alike, is Bape itself. Ever since Nigo left Bape in 2013, the brand has of course never been the same, with many citing Nigo's departure from Bape to be the key reason why Bape is no longer as good as it once was. Many state that the designs of newer Bape products are uninspired and flat out ugly looking. In my opinion, I tend to think that a lot of the newer Bape products look uglier compared to those of the older ones, but there's still some pretty fire pieces in the mix, in particular the Astro Boy hoodie, the Kamen Rider hoodie, the Dragon Ball Z related clothing, and pretty much anything Baby Milo related is still pretty cool looking to me. Speaking of collaborations, ever since Nigo left Bape, there's been a lot of collaborations, for both the good and the bad in terms of pop culture franchises. Ever since Kanye, Pharrell, and the Teriyaki Boyz, there have been multiple rappers and artists that have collaborated with Bape since Nigo's leaving, including artists like Big Sean, Pusha T, Lil Yachty, Wiz Khalifa, Snoop Dogg, Drake, Tyler the Creator, Travis Scott, and even Kid Cudi, who if you remember used to work at the Bape store in New York before his music career took off. Hell, even Gunna and The Weeknd have their very own Bapestas. On December 6, 2018, the 9th and last worldwide Bapehead show was held in New York City, and features artists Wiz Khalifa, Big Sean, Lil Yachty, Pusha T, and Kid Cudi performing, to celebrate Bape's 25th anniversary. Even for artists who haven't collaborated with Bape, they still heavily wear the brand as if it were a rare designer clothing brand, as many of these artists were heavily influenced by the likes of Kanye and Pharrell, or they follow in the footsteps of other artists who were. In truth, the only reason why Bape is still a popular brand today is the same reason it's always been, which is because of hip-hop culture countlessly promoting the brand, which basically applies to every popular designer brand. If your favorite artist is wearing this new brand that you've never heard of, you're going to be interested in what the brand is. And when you do find out, you get sucked into this rabbit hole of mindless materialism. In truth, the main reason why Bape is still valuable today as a clothing brand isn't the brand's quality in their clothing itself, but rather its resale value. Thanks to websites like GOAT and StockX have grown into its own little micro industry. Anyways, once all your favorite artists or really any celebrity or popular figure stops promoting the brand, then it will truly die. I'm not predicting anything, but if that happens to Bape, there's a chance that Bape may indeed die. It's like the concept of the second death, in which the second time you truly die is when someone says your name for the last time. On March 24, 2020, while in the beginning of COVID-19 quarantine, artist Rich Brian freestyled over the beat of Tokyo Drift, with the video being posted on his record label 88 Rising's YouTube channel, which was called Rich Brian Tokyo Drift Freestyle. The video would immediately blow up, obtaining millions of views overnight, and started a trend of Tokyo Drift freestyles. However, Rich Brian hasn't been the only artist to pay tribute to Tokyo Drift. Previously in 2016, upcoming rapper Ski Mask the Slump God released the track Where's the Blow, which was featured on his first major mixtape, Drown in Designer, which blew up on SoundCloud at the time of its release. Where's the Blow of course has a sample from Tokyo Drift, but samples in a more traditional trap beat way. In 2020, artist Lil Yachty also would sample Tokyo Drift on the song TD, which features A$AP Rocky, who mentions the use of the sample in his verse. Now, why do I bring this up? Because it shows that even though the days of the Teriyaki Boyz are over, the hip-hop community still respects and pays tribute to them. Some of the tribute comes in the form of memes, with the main theme of these memes being surrounded around Tokyo Drift, both paying tribute to the song and the movie itself, as even though it's not a good film, it still represents mid-2000s nostalgia. And come on, the film's name is literally Tokyo Drift, how can you ever take it seriously? As for why Tokyo Drift is the Teriyaki Boyz' most popular song, I think that can be attributed to two things. One is that it was from a popular movie from the time, and two, the beat itself. It's just iconic, and you've probably got it stuck in your head every time you think about the song. However, another reason that Tokyo Drift is one of the Teriyaki Boyz' most popular songs is because it's one of the only songs that's available on American streaming services like Spotify. A lot of foreign music, especially hip-hop from Japan, isn't available on many streaming services if you live in North America like I do. So unfortunately, like me, you can't stream the Teriyaki Boyz music on American streaming platforms. This is probably for copyright reasons, and is the same reason why some movies on Netflix are only available if you're in a different country or vice versa. If you have a VPN, you can always just change your location to Japan if you want to. Or like me, you can just use the local files on iTunes and Spotify to listen to the Teriyaki Boyz music. Overall, the story of the Teriyaki Boyz isn't one of sadness or betrayal or anything like that, nor does it need to be. The story of the Teriyaki Boyz is a story of a couple of friends living their dreams of becoming a successful yet short-lived hip-hop group, and there's really nothing more to it than just that. Their journey into the rap game isn't exactly important to the overall history of hip-hop itself, but for many of us, I bet the first time we ever heard Japanese people rapping was through the Teriyaki Boyz, or at least for me, I think it was. Still, the Teriyaki Boyz were extremely important to Japanese hip-hop, as they were some of the first artists in Japan to get collaborations with American superstars like Kanye and Pharrell. I just thought it would be a fun idea to do a documentary on the Teriyaki Boyz and their history, as no one's done a documentary on the Teriyaki Boyz yet. Anyways, I don't really have a clever ending sentence to this video like I usually do, so I hope you enjoyed this documentary or learned something from it. And of course, thank you for watching.